What's up everybody, Commander Sanctum here, and today we have a brand new deck tech using Baylen the Haymaker. Baylen is a 4/3 rabbit warrior for Naya that has 3 activated abilities that allow you to tap different numbers of untapped tokens. Tapping 2 tokens gives you 1 mana of any color, 3 tokens draws a card, and 4 tokens lets you put 3 +1/+1 counters onto Baylen and give her trample until end of turn. Obviously, Baylen will work best as a token deck, but the card doesn't specify what kind of tokens you need to tap, allowing you to be very diverse in deck building with her. There's obviously builds you could do with her like Treasure or Goblins or Sapperlings, but we're going to go with something a bit different. We're going to be focusing almost exclusively on Eldrazi tokens. That is, Eldrazi spawns and Eldrazi Scions, the either 0/1 or 1/1 creatures that let you sacrifice them to add a colorless mana to your pool. This will make for a more unique and, in my opinion, interesting build for Baylen that could still do some serious work in games. With that, let's get into the card highlights. To start out with, we need our Eldrazi token generators. While there are quite a few of them, in admittedly various degrees of usefulness, I'd like to call out a few that I personally think are some of the better ones. Since we have access to green, we have both From Beyond and Awakening Zone, 2 of the best ways to consistently generate Eldrazi tokens, as they will create 1 on each of our upkeeps. From Beyond will even let you sacrifice it to search for an Eldrazi, which may come in handy in some situations. We also have Spawn Gang Commander, which like its Goblin counterpart, will allow us to get 3 Eldrazi tokens immediately, while also allowing us to sacrifice an Eldrazi to shock any target we want. Next up, we have Kozilek's Command and Scattering Invasion, both of which can net us a large amount of tokens all at once. Kozilek's Command is especially great, as it can also act as a removal spell or Graveyard Hate with 2 of its 4 modes. Not to mention, while both spells will net us 5 tokens if we pay 7 mana, Kozilek's Command is more modular, since it allows us to pay more or less mana to get more or less tokens as the need arises. Chittering Dispatcher is another excellent choice, as it gets us a spawn whenever it leaves the battlefield. Normally, this would be so-so, but this one has Myriad, meaning we get temporary tokens whenever we attack with it. If we can consistently attack with Chittering Dispatcher each turn, that will net us at least 3 tokens at the end of combat, giving us a nice amount of tokens for Baylen. We also have Idol of the False Gods and Spawnsire of Ulamog. These are both here as they both create tokens while also being potentially alternate win cons, as they either are or can become monstrous Eldrazi creatures with Annihilator. If swinging with Baylen isn't working out, getting either of these 2 bad boys on the field and activated can greatly help us control our opponents and lock in a kill. Glaring Fleshraker is probably going to become one of the best token generators in the deck, as it'll create a spawn whenever you cast a colorless spell. Since most of the Eldrazi in the deck will likely already be colorless or have the Devoid mechanic, that gives us a lot of token generation capability. Not to mention, whenever our Eldrazi tokens are created, the Fleshraker will also do 1 damage to each opponent per token, which can very quickly add up the damage we're doing. Since we're making a token heavy deck, it's also beneficial to have cards that increase the number of tokens we are creating. One such way to do this is via the Populate mechanic, which will let us create a copy of an Eldrazi token we already control. Rootborn Defenses and Druid's Deliverance are both excellent defensive cards that populate, with Rootborn Defenses letting us protect all of our tokens or Baylen, and Druid's Deliverance protecting us from an opponent's Alpha Strike. Full Flowering is a bit on the expensive side, but lets us populate as many times as we can pay for, which, with an army of Eldrazi that can be sacrificed and tapped with Baylen's ability for mana, could be quite a bit in certain situations. Gyrrid, Mirror of the Wilds, is a good way to let us get more use out of our one-shot Eldrazi cards we play. That is, the Eldrazi creature cards that create a token when it enters and does nothing else. If we play something that creates us a token, we can use these Eldrazi cards that have already fulfilled their purpose to create more tokens, allowing them to consistently pump out Eldrazi tokens for us as long as they remain on the board. Second Harvest is a quick and efficient way to double all of our tokens we have out at any given time. It's important to note that this doesn't say just creature tokens, it says all tokens, so anything else like treasure will also be doubled. It wouldn't be a token deck without at least mentioning the cards that double tokens as they're created. Anointed Procession and Parallel Lives are 2 such cards that will do just that. Doubling Season is another popular one not shown. Unfortunately, all of these types of cards are pretty pricey from a monetary perspective, but they are extremely powerful in such a deck and deserve a shout out. As mentioned before, Eldrazi tokens are the primary tokens we will be making in this deck, but it's not the only kind. Treasures are an extremely efficient method of abusing Baylen's ability as well, and while it's not the focus of the deck, it's not bad to include some of them. Since red has a sort of card draw template that also creates treasures, I figured that would be the best way to include them in this Eldrazi focused deck. Seize the Spoils, Big Score, and Unexpected Windfall are all examples of this type of template, where you have to discard a card to draw 2 cards and create 2 treasures. Not only are we doing the most important thing in Magic, i.e. drawing cards, we're also creating tokens for us to use with Baylen's ability, making these cards a win-win in this scenario. While activating Baylen's third ability and killing with commander damage is going to be our main win con, it's always important to have backups. Since we'll be making a lot of creature tokens, using token-based win cons is a good way to achieve this. Beastmaster Ascension is an excellent example of how to do this, as those 0/1 or 1/1 creatures will become 5/6 or 6/6s when it has enough counters on it, easily turning those benign creatures into monsters to be reckoned with. Triumph of the Hordes is perhaps a less fun way to win the game since it abuses the poison mechanic, but it is still a viable backup if our main Baylen plan goes awry. When it comes to removal, we have a few good choices that will likely wipe our opponent's board while keeping ours mostly intact. All Is Dust is an incredibly fun card and works perfectly in this deck. While it would make us sacrifice Baylen, most of our non-token Eldrazi are going to be colorless, leaving us an army of Eldrazi cards and their tokens. Speaking of tokens, Hour of Reckoning is another good board wipe that would only keep token creatures around. Since our build is all about those tokens, wiping the board will likely be less impactful to us than our opponents. Finally, we have some good utility cards that fit well with our deck. Eldrazi Temple is a given, as it gives us extra mana for casting our Eldrazi spells, of which most of the deck is comprised. Urza's Incubator also helps us cast those spells by reducing the cost of them by 2. This is especially important, as a lot of the Eldrazi creature cards that generate tokens are a bit on the pricey side when it comes to mana cost. Bootlegger's Stash is just a fun card that lets us use our lands to create treasure tokens. This allows us to tap any remaining lands before our turn for treasure, giving us even more fodder for Baylen to swing in for some major damage. Here is an example deck list utilizing all the previously mentioned cards. We have even more Eldrazi token generators at our disposal, much needed ramp to help pay for a more expensive Eldrazi without needing to sacrifice tokens, and a plethora of mana rocks to give us additional ramp and more access to colorless mana that we can use for those Eldrazi that need it. As I mentioned before, Baylen has so much versatility that there are going to be tons of ways to build around her. Is an Eldrazi token theme going to be the most powerful of them all? No, of course not. A lot of the Eldrazi creature cards aren't the greatest and can be overcosted for what they provide. But what I can tell you is that this type of build is going to be more fun and exciting than doing something like treasure or goblin focused. I could pretty much guarantee you that if you sit down at a table with this deck, Eldrazi Spawns and Scions is going to be the last thing on anyone's minds as to the theme of the deck. So when you end up playing that turn 1 Blister Pod or turn 2 Malevolent Rumble, people are going to be so blown away that there's likely going to be tons of laughs and conversations about the deck, and joy will be had by everyone. And really, isn't that what Commander and Magic in general is all about? I think so, and if you do too, then give this type of theme with Baylen a shot. It may not be the most powerful, but I can pretty much guarantee you it will be the most memorable. I hope you enjoyed watching this deck tech on Baylen the Haymaker. The full deck list outlined in this video can be found at the Architect link at the top of the description. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to drop a like and comment, as well as subscribe to the channel for more Magic content. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.